Welcome to the February DAC trainings for 2021. This particular video focuses on state testing and accommodations with a particular focus on spring testing. I'm Jason Howard, a consultant in the Office of Assessment and Accountability and Support at the Kentucky Department of Education. If you need anything clarified from this training, we will have 2 question and answer sessions available to all. You can email dacinfo@education.ky.gov for information on getting access to those, or if your question deals with my presentation directly, feel free to contact me at jason.howard@education.ky.gov. Before we begin, I'd also like to direct you to the accommodated bookmark handouts provided with this training. Now, these can help serve as quick refreshers and reminders on testing day about how to administer accommodations properly. We highly encourage, but we do not require, use of this document for individuals administering accommodations as a quick reference sheet during testing season. Now with that, let's begin the training. So on slide 2, I know if you're like me, when you sit through an annual training that you are required to take, and you're just wishing the presenter would just tell you, yeah, what are the changes, right? Well, for those of you like me, here you go. Here are the major changes for accommodations for 2020-2021 testing. There are no longer any paper and pencil kits for text reader audio. They have been replaced by embedded text-to-speech audio within TestNav. All of this can be set up within Pearson Access Next on a per student or batch basis. There is nothing to receive or ship back. It is all handled online now. As a result, there are no shipping windows this year for accommodated materials. The only official paper kits available will be Braille and large print. All of those will be ordered via additional order. There will be more on that later. We will also now offer an online calculator form for students with the calculator accommodations. Calculators aren't available on every test in TestNav by default, but some of those tests, such as Mathematics Part 8, do not allow calculators. So the average or the general student will not have access to a calculator. However, if a student has an accommodation for a calculator, they may have a handheld calculator, or we now have a special form that will allow that student to take that same math test with an online calculator enabled. All of that can be set up in Pearson Access Next this year. And while this has always been allowed, we have changed the way read-aloud overrides work. While you still must receive KDE approval first, once you do, Pearson can grant you a special access code and directions that Pearson and KDE collaboratively created that will allow you to set up the overrides yourself, which should be more efficient for all involved. In the past, districts had to email me all of their student numbers, grade levels, tests, etc., and KDE and/or Pearson could then set up the groups using all that information. By the time districts sent all of that information we needed just to complete these tasks for them, the district could have just made those groups themselves. So now you can do that on your own, but it has to come with permission from KDE. I do want to stress, however, this is only for situations where you absolutely do not have enough accommodators to provide human readers. This is not for situations where you have 4 students needing accommodations and you have 4 accommodators. In that instance, just give each student a 1-to-1 reader accommodation. This is for schools that have 30 to 40 reading accommodations to provide over a short span and only have 8 to 10 accommodators available. In that instance, KDE will help you group those students into groups of 4. In our experience, the need for this is rare. Typically about 6 to 8 districts a year need this flexibility. We've always allowed it, but we will work with you if you do need it. And lastly, everyone knows about the coronavirus pandemic by now. The Healthy at School guidance document, which is linked in here, should be followed by all district staff and school staff while providing accommodations. Now on slide 3, you can see for both the field test and operational test, only Braille and large print kits will be available in paper form officially. Now we do have some paper kits available for students with accommodations that cannot take online testing. For instance, a child that suffers from seizures or severe vertigo, if they use a computer screen for extended periods, they may not be able to test online. And in those instances, which require an IEP or 504 check by myself, we do have the capacity to mail out paper forms for just those kids. However, those are not available to the public and are not, quote, official paper kits. They're only available in those very rare instances, and they do require an IEP or 504 check, and it will require some type of accommodation, which mentions that they cannot use computer basic online testing. They cannot use a computer. The only official kits that are available are Braille and large print this year, and they're available via additional order. Allow about 2 to 3 weeks for delivery once you order. Pearson will have more info on specific shipping timelines later. The Braille kit, as far as just the Braille kit goes, remains unchanged from previous years. I mean, it's the exact same kit. It still contains the same materials. The main difference this year is that because everything will be ordered via additional order, districts and schools will be tasked with ordering what they want in regard to Braille form types. You can select all UEB or UEB with Nemeth Math and Science. In years past, you just marked how many Braille kits you wanted, and Pearson staff would call and ask what Braille form types you desired. This year, it's on you. Districts must select exactly what they want in regards to UEB or UEB, Nemeth Math, and Science. On slide 5, you see large print kits, and so these remain completely unchanged outside of the fact that they can only be ordered via additional order. That's the only change. They're still black and white. The print and not the pictures are enlarged, so you may need magnifying glasses for students or different types of magnification instruments for the pictures. Colors are not used, but instead only patterns are used, and the contents of the kit overall remain unchanged. I mean, they're going to be the exact same kit you received the previous several years. Now, a welcome change, and this is one of our most requested changes, was that we are converting to text-to-speech that brings the text reader into the TestNav platform. Now, this can be set up within Pearson Access Next on a per student basis or a batch basis. There are directions for that provided by Pearson on how to do either one of them. So you have a lot of students, you can do it in a batch form, which is an export import option. And then per student basis, you just go directly into Pearson Access Next, select the student, and enable it for them. Regardless of how you enable it for a student, it functions very similar to Lexaflow and is made by the same group. So it should be very familiar to students and district staff providing this accommodation. As always, this can be a one-to-one or group setting accommodation provided each student within the group has headphones. We currently do not have samplers and/or practice tests available with this function, but as soon as they are available, this training will be updated and it will be presented in a Monday DAC email. They will be made available. You'll be notified about their existence, and we're planning on getting those out there as quickly as possible. Now, non-standard response templates will largely be a thing of the past for spring state testing. However, I can't say that they will never ever happen. It is possible, albeit extremely rare, that a student may qualify for a paper kit. Think about those kids that maybe don't have Braille or large print, but maybe need it because they can't take a test on a computer screen. And they may also have a need for a non-standard response template. For that reason, we have left those up. So the non-standard response templates are up and they're available on our website year-round. And there's links to all of them on that slide. And so you can work with your students and getting them familiar with them. However, because the use of them will be rare, we will not spend a lot of time discussing non-standard response templates, but they are there if you need them. And if you do find yourself in the need for one and you have questions, you can email me and I will handle that on a case-by-case basis. So now we will switch gears and talk about how the testing environment can impact the way accommodation is provided. Now this has been a big talking point for the past several years because we are moving from paper pencil to online, and with any kind of change, there brings some type of anxiety, right? Like people want to know, well, it's a change, how does it change? And so with the rapid move to online testing, we are now completely online as a state. This is something that must be covered. The important takeaway is this: the rules and regulations which govern accommodations have not changed. Okay, a scribe can still only record what the student instructs the scribe to write. A reader can still only read the words as they are written exactly on the test. Nothing changes in what accommodators or accommodations can do or provide. What changes is the medium in which the students and accommodators are interacting with the test. So some of the accommodations may look a little different. You know, a scribe, a human reader, stop the clock, calculator, dictionary, thesaurus, and assistive technology. All those things can look a little different in an online test, but they're going to be essentially all the rules still apply. Nothing changes. That is why it's imperative that you read the documentation for the test being proctored. You know, for instance, one test may be an online test and a calculator accommodation is provided online, so you have an online calculator available to you. Another test may be online as well, but calculators are only offered via handheld. So think about last year versus this year K-Prep. Last year K-Prep, we did not have an online calculator. We only provided handheld calculators for calculator accommodations. This year, same test, K-Prep, but we now have available to us online calculators and handheld calculators. So year to year it can change, test to test it can change. So you need to read the testing manuals that come with them, but as far as accommodations go, everything must adhere to the inclusions of special population training, which you had to have had before you provide accommodations on state testing. Now, slide 9, we'll go into a few of these in detail just to make sure that they're clear, because these are the ones that could look a little different on state testing with online. So what can happen with a scribe, what a scribe can do and provide stays the same. There are small differences between writing something and typing something. So when we discuss a scribe on a test where typing is required, a scribe may type for the student if the student is unable to type on their own. Now, if the student is able to type on their own, you're more than welcome to let them type on their own. It is still a one-to-one accommodation since the student will be directing the scribe on what to type. We do want to reiterate that technology is no longer required to be marked on an IP. I know that was always in the past. We required that in OAA, but that's because the test was given via paper. Now that it's online, it's just assumed that you'll use technology. And remember, when scribing for a student, if you do not hear them say it or they do not direct you to type it, then it should not be added as part of that response. All right, so the online assessments will still allow a human reader to provide reading accommodations to students. It can be a one-to-one or a small group up to 4 accommodation that you provide to small groups, as long as all the students have the same form and are taking the same grade level of the test. And so the proctor delivering the accommodation would simply read directly from the computer screen. And all other rules still apply that applied to human reader before. So, you know, you need to watch emphasizing words or answer choices. If it's not written on the test, you don't say it. You basically read word for word what is exactly in the test. So, in a situation where a student requires breaks during the test or the session must pause momentarily, this must occur directly in Pearson Access Next. When you pause a session, make sure you just pause it and do not end that session. If you end it, you will not be able to resume it. You also want to document, just for your safekeeping, the stop and start times every time a session is paused. Now, the system will do that for you, but if you're like me, you probably want to take, safeguards as well and make sure you record it manually just in case something happens. And so this needs to be documented, whether it's a medical situation, a behavior redirection, or circumstances. Anytime you need to stop the test, you can stop it in Pearson Access Nest. Just make sure you pause it and do not end it, because if you end it, it cannot be recovered. As far as I'm aware, and this happened a couple of years ago when we first started online testing, had a district that ended a session, and Pearson can't even restart those sessions. So they had to redo all that. So don't end it. Now, calculators have a small change this year, but it's not a big one. So calculators for online testing will be a resource provided to all students where they are necessary. The Desmos calculators provided online will be available to elementary students as a 4-function calculator. Middle school students will have the scientific calculators, and high school students will have access to graphing calculators. Now, there is one small caveat to this. This only differs for the subject of science. On science, now all other subjects adhere to those groupings. So elementary is 4 function, middle school is scientific, high school is Desmos. That's true for every test except science. Science tests at middle and high school level only have the scientific and do not have graphing calculators available on those tests. That goes for high school. So the high school science would only have the scientific calculator available. Now, this year we do have online calculators available for students with accommodations, and those can be set up in Pearson Access Next on a per student basis and can even be provided on non-calculator forms, which means if a test says there's no calculator available and the student has a calculator accommodation, they can use an online calculator form. We do have an override for that. Now, this does not mean that handheld calculators are no longer permitted. It just means there are circumstances that must be met before the handheld calculator or online calculator would be allowed on a non-calculator test. These same circumstances in this chart would also dictate whether an online calculator would be permitted for the same student on a test that does not allow a calculator. No matter what medium the calculator is to be provided in, be it handheld or an online version, this chart remains applicable as to whether or not it is allowed. In the chart on the screen, you can see the 4 most likely scenarios to occur, which dictate whether a handheld or online calculator can be provided as an accommodation. As you read the chart across, if a box is marked NA, it means the answer to that question is irrelevant, as you already have enough information to make a determination on the use of the calculator. For instance, in scenario 1, as you read across the first question, does the student receive accommodations? If the answer to that is no, then you can immediately say the student does not receive a handheld calculator or an online calculator and is expected to use whatever calculators are available on that test. And if there are no calculators available on tests, they don't get a calculator at all, like every other student. Now, in scenario 2, we do see the student receives accommodations, but they are not using a paper and pencil kit, and their accommodations do not include the use of a handheld or online calculator. So that student would not qualify for a calculator either, handheld or online variety. Okay, they only get whatever the general, whatever any other kid gets. Now, in scenario 3, we see the student receives accommodations, is not using a paper and pencil kit. Okay, so they're testing online, and they do have a math deficiency and calculators clearly marked as an accommodation, and they have used it routinely during instructions throughout the year. This student would qualify for a handheld or online calculator. Now in the IEP, starting this year with OSIL, they have had it where the student had to mark, or the ARC team had to mark handheld or online. Whatever calculator that student uses or is marked on an IEP, they can use. So they can use an online calculator on a non-calculator test, or they can use a handheld calculator on a non-calculator test. But that, for that kid, the calculator is approved, okay? Now, in scenario 4, we see the student receives accommodations and is taking a paper kit, such as Braille or large print. Those kits are only available via paper and pencil and do not use the online system. Therefore, the student must be provided a calculator, whether they have a calculator accommodation or not. So a handheld is allowable there. Online calculators would not be an option because those tests are not provided online. Now, if you have a scenario come up that is different than one of these 4, you can email us at dacinfo@education.ky.gov, and we can discuss those on a case-by-case basis. This chart covers the vast majority of possible scenarios and outcomes. Now, on slide 13, this is not an exhaustive list of accommodations provided on state testing, but is the most popular accommodations that are provided. The important thing to note here is that the move to online testing has not changed the amount or variety of accommodations provided. It has also not changed the regulations on any of these accommodations. All rules and regulations covered in the Inclusions of Special Populations training still apply, still must be adhered to. These accommodations and many more are still provided during online testing the same way with the same rules as before. The student is merely taking the test electronically now instead of on paper and pencil. Now, for a more extensive discussion of accommodations in the online environment, because this was a very brief overview, but we have a resource available, and I'd like to direct your attention to the online testing toolbox that was developed last year and revamped this year by a team at KD, including Kevin O'Hare, Shara Savage, Ben Riley, Paul Shoemaker, and myself. It is roughly 40 pages of discussion about how to best provide accommodations during online testing, technology tips, as well as tips and tricks. It involves all general policy and everything surrounding online testing. It is currently in the final stages of approval at KDE, but it will be available shortly on the website. When that happens, it will be announced in a Monday DAC email, and the training for this will be updated to reflect the release. So this concludes this training. As always, I'd like to thank you for all that you do for the children of the Commonwealth on a daily basis. If I or any member of my office can assist you during these unprecedented times, do not hesitate to email us at dacinfo@education.ky.gov. Or if you'd prefer to call us, you can call us at 502-564-4394. If you have a specific question about this training that deals with anything discussed in this training, you can contact me directly at jason.howard@education.ky.gov. Once again, I want to thank you for all that you do for the children of the Commonwealth. I have a couple in school myself, and I hope you have a great year, great end to your school year, and a great testing season. Thanks.